I think it was probably day 2. And I call my mom and I go, yeah, I don't think the Army's really for me. And she goes, but it is, because you signed the contract. And I'm going to tell you a couple of things. She goes, you can make this the best tour of duty if you want. You can also make it the worst. And that decision is 100% on you. And she goes, but if you want it to be good, you only have to do one thing. And I'm like, what? And she goes, you have to participate. Mm-hmm. You just remember, all you have to do is participate. It will all come to you if you go in and participate. And, it really didn't make sense to me at the time. And I did a complete shift in my thought process. I'm here for a reason. They want me here. And so I'm just going to excel. Whatever they tell me to do, I'm going to do my absolute best. And, I definitely struggled with some things, but I excelled in a lot more, to the point where I was in the Army for 6 months and I got my first Army Achievement Medal.
Welcome to the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast. I am so excited for you to join me this week. Dean Banowetz is my guest, who is here and based out of Hollywood, California, who travels the world as this gifted hair artist beyond words. His personality, his presence, and his love and desire to help him make people feel and look good, not to mention just knows how to deliver in the most authentic way. It's why Dean is so successful in all aspects of his career and life. And I couldn't be more deliciously happy to have him as my guest, to sit down and have this fun, full of laughter conversation. You must sit down around this campfire, gather your coffee, gather those cannolis, and join me for the most fun hour you are about to hear of my part 1 and my part 2 conversation. Let's get started. Here we go. Hi, Dean.
How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
I am fabulous.
Hi, handsome.
How are you? I am obsessed with that hair.
I'm obsessed with your handsomeness there, man. How are you?
Very sweet. I'm doing really good.
Well, it's been a long time.
It has been.
It's been a little too long, actually. And I want to thank you for joining me. I think this is going to be fun.
Oh, I know it's going to be fun, girl. There's no question.
Well, I want to thank you. So I just want to go into this whole journey of, you started your life in Iowa, as we all know, meaning we know who anybody gets the pleasure of spending time with you, Dean Banowetz. And we know that you grew up on a farm, and we know that you're a child of 15.
Yes.
So I would imagine, as a little boy growing up on a farm in Iowa and being a family of 15 kids, what was that like for you growing up?
OMG. Well, I'm lucky number 13, so that's all that really matters.
Yeah, right? That's a great number.
It is a great number. And obviously, working and being born and raised on a farm is a lot of work. I mean, yeah. I think early on the work ethic was instilled immediately because we all had roles and responsibilities. And I always, my mom just passed away a year and a half ago. And, when a parent passes, you kind of constantly think of all of the things they used to say. And she was always, if you see something that needs to be done and you can do it, do it. Don't ask to do it, just do it. And literally that has, I don't want to say haunted me. It has reminded me every day of my life, if I see something that I can do and it needs to be done, just step up and do it. And I
Yeah.
honestly, and with what we do on set, if you see something that needs to be done, get it done.
Well, and I also think that going back to being both of us from the Midwest, both of us raised in family businesses, the farm, for all intents and purposes, was just where you learn, like you said, your work ethics. I learned my work ethics from my parents and my grandparents. That foundationally like roots you and projects you going forward. And like you also, and I'm sorry about your mom. I lost my mom right before I think you lost your mom at the beginning of the pandemic, like literally 2 weeks before the country shut down. And your father had already passed, correct?
Yeah, my dad passed away when I was 15, when I was a junior in high school.
And I was 14 going into my sophomore year. So we have a lot of similarities. And I don't know about you, but even with all the wonderful foundation that we both come from, there was this really strange experience of all of a sudden feeling orphaned.
It is true when both parents pass. And listen, I'm so far from an orphan because there are so many people in my family. But
yeah,
when there is that reality, if you will, that the DNA that created you is no longer. And there's something to be said about that. And then you have all of your own morality issues and concepts and ideas and things you're trying to process. And I because there's what, like 42 grandkids and 50 some great grandchildren. And then I stop to think, and I'm like, I am the only sibling, not married, no children, zero offspring from me.
mm-hmm.
And it used to bother me quite a bit because I always thought I'd be a dad, and life works differently for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But my nephew was like, yeah, but you're the coolest uncle we've ever had. And you show us what can be done. You left Iowa and you took a chance, and that chance really worked with you because you worked for it. And so I always have to stop and take a step back and go, you know what, I'm setting an example, even when you don't think you're setting that example.
100%, and really, honestly, so relatable, because like yourself, though married, and multiple pregnancies, never having successfully gone through, and that's okay. I mean, it's just is what it is. It's part of the fiber of your story or my story, but more importantly, to inspire nieces who look to you or look to me and go, wow, look at what Aunt Fifi does.
Right.
She really took it, the bull by the horn, and with no guarantees. Not that there's any guarantees in life, of course, and we see that more and more in today. But I think going back to when you and I were starting our careers, but I want to go further back. Before you started your career, you went from the farm and the work ethics into the Army. Were you
U.S.
18?
Army. Oh, that's the butchest I can sound.
I mean, seriously, what made that decision come about?
Okay, truth be told, right?
Mm-hmm.
My dad passed when I was a junior in high school, and I was like, if I do not leave this farm, I will stay on this farm for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I've had full ride scholarships to music colleges. I sang all through high school, and I made state, and I just didn't want to make that my profession. And in your senior year, everybody's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I was like, I don't know. And I don't feel like I'm in a good place to make a decision right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I needed money for college, and I needed just to get away. Mm-hmm. And I joined the Army because of the GI Bill. It turned out to be not as good as they claimed it to be, but it was great. I'm very thankful for it. But when I got in, and I think it was probably day 2, and I call my mom and I go, yeah, I don't think the Army's really for me. And she goes, but it is, because you signed the contract, and I'm going to tell you a couple of things. She goes, you can make this the best tour of duty if you want. You can also make it the worst. And that decision is 100% on you. And she goes, but if you want it to be good, you only have to do one thing. And I'm like, what? And she goes, you have to participate. You just remember, all you have to do is participate. It will all come to you if you go in and participate. And, it really didn't make sense to me at the time. And I did a complete shift in my thought process. I'm here for a reason. They want me here. And so I'm just going to excel. Whatever they tell me to do, I'm going to do my absolute best. And, I definitely struggled with some things, but I excelled in a lot more, to the point where I was in the Army for 6 months and I got my first Army Achievement Medal. And I call my mom again, and I was like, I'm super happy, because this is not it's not a common situation that quickly into the Army. And I go, Mom, I thought everybody would be kind of happy for me and, proud of me. And they're all mean. They're all kind of crappy about this. And she goes, all right, the other thing I'd like to tell you is your worst enemy is probably always going to be a jealous person. So in that case, make sure you give them something to be jealous about, and just be mindful of that. And I've thought about that in every single career moment of my existence. And I was like, you know what? If you're going to be jealous, I will give you something to be jealous about. I'm just going to work harder and stronger. But I will say the Army taught me a lot of discipline. And I was 19, and it was probably the best thing for me at that time of my life.
Yeah, I would imagine that. I mean, first off, your mom, boy, talk about like golden nugget drop bombs, like, such an intuitive soul and such a wise individual to have given you such insights that even if you couldn't fathom it all in the moment, how all these years later, you just go, oh my God, I was graced with this angel of a mother who really got it.
Right.
And like subliminally gifted you all these things to go forth with. But discipline and the structure of the military, being in the Army also, so coming from the farm and then the military, I mean, seriously, it couldn't not make you unstoppable by the mindset of going forward and just being committed to that, going out and being the best you could possibly be.
Right.
Well, and then the participation part as well, like
100%. And the thing too is like, when I lecture at a lot of beauty schools all over the US, and they're like, oh, well, of course, you live in LA, you can always make things happen. I'm like, time out. I am from a farm in Iowa. We all have the opportunity to make a difference if we participate. Mm-hmm. And I really, and it's such an open-ended situation or phrase, but it's so true. And when my mom would drop those golden nuggets, it was so, what's the word? I mean, it was so casual. It was like just conversation. It wasn't like you need to participate. If you want things to change, you just have to participate.
Yeah. And the other statement about, when you had the realization of here you are being acknowledged for something that you did, and the reception around you, your community, so to speak, was not well received. And that's possibly your first real conscious awareness of jealousy, yes. Not putting it into jealousy, but like, why aren't they celebrating me? Or why wouldn't they? I would do the same. And if the tables were turned, and for your mother to give you that insight, like life lesson,
but
here's reality check.
On point for every aspect of any career, every day of your life, make it a good day, participate.
Correct. And you're also going to walk into, sadly, and it's an interesting thing, and we'll get into that further down the line, but it is an interesting thing because I still to this day go, wow, can't people just be kinder and more celebratory and raise each other up? We're all on the same page. We're all in the same trailer. We're all the same, like we all have the same intention to get to the finish line because we've got a business plan here called a project. We all have to do this together. So why aren't we playing in the sandbox together well?
True words.
So I think, we'll circle back to that. So let's then go to who at that stage of life, as you were a little boy and, when you were dreaming while you were milking the cow or carrying a bucket or making the beds or helping clean up after dinner, whatever you were doing with this family, who were you thinking of? What was inspiring you? What were you dreaming of as that little boy in Iowa?
Well, I can say, because I vividly remember a lot of different things. We had one bicycle, by the way, for 15 kids and on the farm. And there was, at the end of our lane, there was another farm and they raised Clydesdale horses. And they're just these majestic and just powerful animals and just gorgeous. And I've always loved horses. And I remember I would ride to the end of the lane and just hang out by the fence of that pasture. And I would just be engrossed in like them galloping and playing and frolicking. And I was like, whoa, that is something that I constantly remember. And when I would be riding the bike, I was like, oh, is this what my life is going to be? And, because no one really in the family would move that far away from, the farm. And my mom is one of 13. My dad is one of 16. They're all, very close in the same area. And it was just like, oh, whoa. And struggling to figure out what you want to do with your career also.
Yeah.
But I just knew that was not the life for me.
Yeah.
Even as a little kid, I was like, oh, I'm going to do fun things. I would always be up for that and be ready for it. And I think when my sister Deb, number 10, I should say we all have a Dewey Decimal System, right? So I'm number 13. And so I will get an email that'll say number 13 and it'll be blah, 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 blah. And it'll be signed like 4.4. So then I'm like, Judy Ellis, Dolores Lloyd. It's my brother Lloyd's fourth kid, Tasha Tanya Brody. It's my niece Brandy.
Oh my God, it's brilliant. I so love that. I mean, I've heard this before, but I love it so much every time you talk on.
So when my sister Deb left for college, I was super emotional. And she was going to Patricia Stevens College in Milwaukee for PR. And I felt it was so far away. And she was so excited to do new and different things. And she was literally the only one that had left. And I was like, yes. Yes, because that was my first experience. And, she's about 9 years older than myself, but I was like, oh, she can do that. And then my next sister, number 11, Annette, she's kind of stayed, close. And then my brother Leon, number 12, he moved away to go to college. And I was like, oh, there are options, but we need to make it happen for ourselves because there's so many kids. We can't rely on any kind of monetary help from mom or anyone really. So the thing is we know what we need to do to survive. And that was my first kind of impression of, oh, I don't have to be here for the rest of my life.
So do you feel that then observing your elder siblings was part of that source of inspiration of, oh, I don't have to just ride the bicycle down the lane and luster over the Clydesdales. I can actually get out because I've seen my siblings before me start to do this.
100%.
That's really cool. And also, I really don't know that I knew you were in musical theater, I take it, right?
Yeah, I sang all through high school. I made state. I had a lot of scholarships. I sang in the Army as well. And it was funny because my first day on American Idol, I'm like, I'll never sing again because everybody's getting railed and everybody has an opinion. And I was like, it's so enjoyable, but I haven't sang since then.
Well, and so interestingly enough, coming from also musical theater and getting the leads and everything, though now that you hear this Brenda Vaccaro voice, you go, how the hell did that happen? Well, that's a whole nother story. But the point is that, for a kid coming out of the performing arts, and you think about it today, even more so, like, oh, you got to go to Hollywood, or you got to go to New York, or you got to. And also for me, I also didn't come from a family who at that point had money. I mean, my father died without the life insurance and the house attached to the SBA loan and having lost businesses. And it was a struggle. Right. And it was like, you have to fend for yourself. Wherever you go, that's your responsibility.
100%.
Right. And so it was really a struggle to figure it out. Knowing that, of course, I love the arts. I was a fine artist. I was a performing artist. But how are you going to pay the bills? Hence, ending up in beauty school. So I want to hear from the Army, like, where did beauty school and hair come into this whole trajectory?
So when I was in the Army, it was under Ronald Reagan. He was president at the time. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very known that he was a huge supporter of the military and spent a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And when they did a reduction in force, a RIF, the budget was getting crunched, and I got out like 6 months before I was supposed to, which then classified as I was laid off, right?
Oh.
And so when I went back to Iowa, at that time in it wasn't mid 90s, it was late 80s.
Yeah.
The farming situation was crazy. I remember John Deere, Caterpillar, International Harvester, Alcoa had done massive layoffs. Thousands and thousands of people in my home community were laid off, no work. And when I went back to Iowa had a program called JTPA, which is Job Training Partnership Act. And, they pay for trade school. And during the Army, I was getting my associate's degree for art education and art history. And I just was kind of at a crossroads. I didn't really know. I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to work in a museum. And my brother Leon, number 12, he was like, you need to do hair. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, you used to braid the tails on the cows when you were supposed to be milking, just do hair. And I was like, they were cute braids. Okay. Just saying. My dad probably never thought so, but whatever. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he goes, he was an art director for a magazine. And he goes, listen, I know how much I have to pay hair and makeup people when we do a photo shoot. He goes, you have an artistic background. You understand color theory and silhouette, balance and design and all of these things. Plus you've got a great personality and people would love to work with you. And I was like, it was so foreign to me because I had never, ever thought about doing hair. Yeah. And I went to Bill Hill's College of Cosmetology in Davenport, Iowa, in the back of a furniture carpet warehouse. And the second I walked through that door, I felt at home. It's a weird feeling, but because of the Job Training Partnership Act, they helped pay for my 2-year trade degree, which was amazing. And while I did hair during the day, I obviously still needed to make some money. Yeah. And I was a singing, dancing waiter at this regional dinner theater called Circa 21 in Rock Island, Illinois. And every night I would go and I would be singing and slinging hash or whatever. And it was one of those things where the costume designer was like, hey, we need some help doing wigs for a national tour called A Closer Walk with Patsy Cline. And I was like, yeah, sure. I had no clue about any of that. And of course, the budget was a thumbtack and maybe a paperclip. Yeah. And, Halloween wigs, we need to make these look decent. And that was kind of my first kind of bug within the entertainment world.
Yeah.
The salon I was working in, the next youngest stylist was 67.
Oh,
And
I
the
love
and
this.
the and the oldest was 86.
Love it.
And Bev, I'll never forget her. God rest her soul. She still can't be alive. She'd be like 120. But Bev, always a cigarette hanging in her mouth while she's doing a roller set. And I remember I was so stressed about a closer walk. And she goes, "What do you got?" And I tell her, and she goes, "Easy." And I was just like, girl, these people scared me. And I was just, it was so new to me. And she was like, "Just get in there and you do it." And I will never forget her. She was awesome. But she was like old school boot camp where this is the roller set you need to do. There's no question about it. And don't mess it up.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what I needed, because then, it takes you back to the principles of hairstyling and your foundational basis
100%.
and all of these things. And it was a great experience for me, but that's how the whole beauty school and the musical theater thing really happened. And it really kind of started to transform me as well.
So you get out 2 years later while doing these sidebar situations with, now you've like stuck your big toe in with Bev and the cast and crew, and started learning how to solve problems with a thumbtack and a paper clip, which is everything, because this life as we know it is all about showing up and solving problems.
It's all troubleshooting.
Every bit of it. It's not about, if you're a pivot point haircut or a sassoon. I mean, let's face it, that's great, because, being both of us have been associated with manufacturers, product lines, all the things, you want to show up being extraordinary. But at the same time, there's so much more to that. It's really the whole package.
100%.
Yeah. And it's how do you seamlessly make that all go into what you have now successfully been able to create for yourself. So I have to take you back. I don't know if you know this. First off, let me ask you this. So you go from this 2-year experience and you finish your trade school and it's help being paid for. And now you get out, and now what?
Well, when I got out of beauty school, I was always, I take it back to beauty school. In Iowa, you need 2,100 hours, which is a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And, when I went, there was no piercings allowed, no visible tattoos were allowed. We had to wear a white lab jacket, a button-down shirt, and we had dress slacks for guys. And guys could only wear 2 accessories. We could wear a wristwatch and we could wear a tie.
Mm-hmm.
I, of course, own no ties. So, but when I would put a tie on and the lab jacket, I legit looked like a doctor.
Oh, I bet.
And there's something to be said. When you look good, you feel better. Mm-hmm. When you feel better, your confidence goes up. Mm-hmm. And I remember, because it was one of my brother's ties and I just borrowed it. And I was like, every day I'm gonna try to wear a tie. I'm gonna try to dress up, especially when I was on the clinic floor. And I remember I went to the Salvation Army and I bought a bunch of these ties. I'm sure they were all from like dead guys, but I gave them a second life. I'm just saying, like Paisley, like you name it, I would get it. And it kind of transformed my experience at school, because clients would come in and would like to book a student. And they're like, "Oh, who's the guy in the tie?" And they're like, "Oh, that's Dean. He's a student. Oh, I can book with him." Legit would book just based on my appearance. And again, fellow beauty school students were like, "Why is he always getting booked out?" And I will never forget our front desk woman, Lillian, smoked, I'm sure, 2 packs of Pall Mall, no filter every day. And Lil was like, "Because you look like crap and he doesn't." And she just laid it out. And that's when I was like, "What?" She goes, "Yeah, people look at you and they want to book with you because you look nice and you follow the rules and the dress code." And at that point, I'm like, the same thing was in the Army. like people would be upset because I'm following the guidelines that were given to us. And there's so many people that fight that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, listen, they're guidelines for a reason.
Yeah.
Do you have to dress like this the rest of your life? No, this too shall pass. But the thing is when you understand you are in the beauty business and you look like crap, you're not going to have a business.
Correct.
And you think it's very common sense, but it takes some people some time to figure it out. And, and that's why I'm like, when somebody's like, what sets you apart from anybody else? And I go, one thing, go the extra mile because it's never crowded. I like to under promise and over deliver, but I want to make sure that I get the bare minimum perfect. And then I can embellish and I can enhance or I can perfect. But I always thought it was just so odd that people were like, why is this happening to him? Well, because he paid attention, he participated, and he's playing the game, if you will.
Right.
And it was very valuable to me. And, after beauty school, the theater, they wanted to keep me on, and I would help with actors, cuts and colors. The salon I had was a half a block away from the theater. So when I finished working during the day, I could just walk to a night job as a singing, dancing, waiter. And the thing was, within the first 6 months of working in that theater, I was cutting and coloring everybody's hair who worked there. Mm-hmm. And it really helped me. It helped sustain my business. And it was like, I felt for like the first time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be.
Yeah, I get that. And so you took all that experience. Now, did you go and work for another salon owner immediately after beauty school? Or did you open your own space? Did you take that leap of faith? How did that work?
So this salon where everybody was a lot older than me,
yeah,
was the salon not far from this theater. And they were all renters. And because I was also a massage therapist, I did skincare. And
of course you did.
I talked to the owner and I asked, because there was a treatment room in the back. And I go, could I rent that for a hair studio? And she goes, yeah, absolutely. And I would have the other room to do massages. And I will never forget, it was the Dean's cutting closet, and the tagline was, come out of the closet looking great. And just imagine that's a little tiny cubby in the back of like an old lady salon where everybody's getting shampoo sets. Everybody is, a weekly. And I just, at one point, I think I had about 60 grandmas because they were like, oh, what's he doing in the back? Because I would always be working on projects and wigs and, traveling and teaching for Matrix and all of these things. And they were like living through me.
Okay, so wait a minute. You were traveling for Matrix?
Yeah, I was one of them.
How did we miss each other?
Were you with Matrix as well?
Seriously, how did we miss each other? I think I was a few years ahead of you. But what ended up happening for me, and thank God for the blue hair ladies, and thank God for those roller sets, because that's what kept those doors open. That's what kept consistent business. That's what allowed me to learn and really grow our knowledge, our solving problems. I mean, I was also like yourself. I mean, I also during beauty school trained for the Hair Olympics.
Oh, great.
So I trained for the Hair Olympics. I was in a lot of competitions with that. That's where I learned a high lip blonde along with an asymmetrical cut and doing all these things while having to like go into lockdown. I don't know if you ever saw any of those things, but they literally like, you'd have to do your wet set. You'd have to get every hair in place because a high lip blonde, you could, as you know, see every hair. Lock it in. They literally take a hairnet, lock it, staple it off. You'd have to leave, go do your model's makeup, get her in her gown, do the whole thing. Then you'd bring them back to this ballroom. And when they would do the countdown, you'd cut off the net and you'd have to do the finished styling for the competition presentation.
Right.
So there was that whole like real structured training. But all that structured training had led up to I had like 300 men in college whose hair that I was cutting, who randomly just asked me to cut their hair pre-beauty school.
I love that.
So I was cutting hair pre-beauty school, not accepting payments. I won't tell you how I was accepting payments, and it wasn't through sex. I will just be very clear about that. I will be honest, it was through bong hits. And I thought that was kosher because I thought, oh, I can't accept payment. I'm not legal. I'm not licensed. They'll never give me a license. But even though I didn't even know I was going to go to beauty school after pre-med, fine arts, and film school, I just knew I had to make a living and pay back my school loans.
Right.
And get into the film business because I had no connections to that. But the Matrix and all that, that's how I ended up being the only white on the black hair Olympic team. So I had a huge black clientele in beauty school.
Right.
Because like yourself, I showed up. I was always the good girl who followed the rules. Yes, I was a rule breaker, but not in the obvious ways.
Right.
You told me to show up and stand here. I showed up and stood there. You told me I needed to show up and present myself and wear that uniform proudly. I wore that uniform proudly. Right. But the black clientele in my area was fairly large, and it was during the Jerry curl world and relaxers. And there was a lot of unfortunate hair being done. And I was like, look at hair is hair. Hair is like sculpture. Like your hair shouldn't be like doused in this lime and like this oil and not have life to it. It needs to move and it needs a great cut. It needs a good blowout. And people were like, it was like I was talking Hebrew.
Right.
But what the results were so different than when they walked in that they kept showing up. And that's what led me to being with the Black Hair Olympic team. And that's what led me to my career. And I thought it was going to stay hair. And I would have loved it to have stayed hair, frankly.
Right.
That's like my soul. So for you, how long were you with Matrix?
I was with Matrix for 7 years.
I love that product line. I love that company.
Well, when I started, I had wanted to be on the hair team, but I started out on the aesthetics team. And then because I had my massage therapy license, then I helped to lead Biolage Body, which was their spa line. And then after they and makeup. So I was skincare, makeup, body care, anything spa driven.
Yeah.
And when they alleviated that branch, then they moved me into hair, which was great. And I was doing a lot of education, a lot of training, a lot of hair shows. And I was a platform artist with Matrix up until 2000 when I moved to LA.
That is absolutely classic. I will never forget. I was the finale of a haircut in the Chicago Convention Center for like the Matrix. And it was Xenon that was cutting my hair. And it was during the Prince and the Revolution period, because it was like 1985, 86.
Right. It
was 85. And my hair was long and wild like this. And he was like, oh, great. I'm going to give her this short asymmetrical haircut and it's just going to be like amazing. Well, what he didn't know about my hair was the shorter you cut it, the less curly it is. And that was what I thought was a real fascinating, eye-opening experience, because here's this very well-established, very, respected hairdresser, designer, who really didn't get it. And he was like trying to get something like the liquid out of the turnip mentality.
Right.
And it wasn't happening. And I got to tell you, this lion went into depression having not hair. I was just like, what has happened?
I understand that. it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It was for me, it taught me empathy with clients. It taught me what it's like to be, because I'd never had a negative experience with my hair.
Right.
Leading up to that moment. And I was always like, I'd walk into a salon, the salons that I grew up in, and people would fall over themselves because I had a nice head of hair.
Right.
And so I never had anything but good experiences. And that was part of why I think I wanted to give that to other people, to also make them feel and look good. Growing up in the fashion industry also, that's what you did. You made people feel better than when they left, they felt better than when they walked in. Right. That was your job. That was your goal. That was called customer service. And so that really taught me a moment of, oh, I never want to make people feel like this. I want people to feel heard, and I want people to feel beautiful and not walk out depressed. So in 2000, you come to LA.
Yes.
And when you land here, do you know anybody?
So this is my coming to LA story, because, at this time, I'm a platform artist for Matrix, and doing hair stuff and hair shows and training, salon education and all of these things. I have my own salon, and I would have every 6 months, I would do a goal review with my employees. And for me, there's 4 parts to a goal. You have to be specific about what you want. You have to be realistic about it. You have, number 3 is you have to take accountability, and it's almost like that information gathering stage. And then, the final step is a deadline. And so, I'm going through goals with my one employee, Kier, and, we get through we establish her goals for the next 6 months. And then she did something to me that hasn't been done. And she was like, what are your goals? And at that time, I am not kidding you, every penny I made went back into that salon. My whole goal was just to keep it alive. Because it's expensive. There's there's so much overhead. It's just a lot. It's difficult. Yeah. And I was like, my goal is to keep this salon alive. And she was like, oh, no. You need a personal goal just like us. And this was September of 99. And so I was like, I've always wanted to do hair for TV. So I'm very specific, right? Realistically, I live in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa. So my options for hair in anything remotely entertaining would be possibly to do a farmer's hair for a Farm and Fleet commercial, or I could drive 45 minutes to the biggest city and possibly do a blowout for an anchor on a news station. But like realistically, that was it. And so, for my accountability and due diligence of gathering that information, whenever I have a goal, I freely speak about it. So I'm doing platform work, and I'm like, hey, you guys, if any of you guys hear of a place where you can, a school where you can learn how to do hair for TV and film, let me know. And I would just ad nauseum, right? And she goes, and I'm with Kier. And so for step 4, we always put like a 6-month time limit on the goal. And she said to me, she goes, I don't think 6 months is long enough for you to do that. And I'm not sure how many listeners are Leos, but when you tell a Leo we can't do something, I am 6'4", and I will bend my big ass over backwards, even if I have to bust a vertebra, and I will work it out. I don't know how. Yeah. I don't know how it will happen, but that just puts a fire under me. Yeah. And again, September 99, one of my friends in the nail world, Vicky Peters, God rest her soul, she sent me a newspaper clipping. And it was for Susan Lipson's Onset Motion Picture Hair Academy when she had it. I don't know if she still has it or what she does with it.
I believe she does. I believe she has something.
But, and it was great. And I thought, it was a lot of money. And I was like, it was like maybe a year's worth of my rent, whatever. But I was like, when you want to do something and you're like, you need that money, you will find it legally. Somehow it will find you. And I remember January 3rd, 2000, I flew to LA. I knew two people that lived here. They had just moved from Iowa. I stayed with them. I borrowed one of their cars and I went to her school. I think there was like 10 of us, maybe 8 of us. And I just had a great time and I participated. I did everything we were supposed to do and so on and so forth. And Susan's like, you need to live out here. And I was like, no, I'm Iowa. I have my, everything's there. And little did I know, she gave my name to a couple of producers. And I was like, I'm getting this, messages. And I was like, I go, Susan, are you giving my name to people? And she was like, yeah. And I go, you need to leave me alone. And she goes, just apply for one of the jobs. And it really was never my intention.
Yeah.
And I faxed my resume to the television show Extra. And they called me within 10 minutes and they were like, we'd love for you to interview for the hair supervisor position on Extra. I had no clue. And so I flew out to Extra. I had my interview, my little audition. I thought it was just going to be a little chit chat. They made me style the host hair for the show. And it was a non-union gig. And I ended up coloring the host of the show. And I came back to Iowa and people were like, how was it? And I was like, I think they liked me. They said they liked me, but it's LA. I don't know if I believe them, but I don't know, I don't know these people. And 5 days later, they called and offered me the job as a hair supervisor on the television show Extra. And my first day of work was Valentine's Day 2000, less than 6 months of that goal that I made with Kier.
Incredible.
And I flew out on February 13th. I stayed with the only 2 friends I knew, borrowed their car again to drive back and forth to work. And the best way I can describe it is it was 100% seamless. Like I could not have planned it myself. I just kind of released it to the universe. Listen, if I'm supposed to be here, it will work its way out. And every single detail of my move to California was so precisely planned without me planning it. Like every single thing fell into place. And I just remember telling myself, I'm going to lean into this. This is a whole new world for me. I remember the first time I was ever on a soundstage was my interview. But the thing is your attention to detail, your work ethic, all of that makes a big difference. And listen, I'm not sure. They paid me a ton less than what they would pay a local person because I didn't know any better. But from Iowa standards, it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And, hindsight 2020, I was thrilled.
Yeah.
And I was there for 3 years. And that's when I met Ryan Seacrest. He was one of our guest weekend hosts, and I did his hair. He loved it. And then he took me with him to American Idol. And when American Idol started, it was a competition reality show. And so there was no spot for it. Like, is this a union show? Is it a non-union show? Is it a crossover? A little bit of both? What is this contract? And you're new. I mean, I don't know what the union is. All I know is I need to get in it. And my hours on Extra helped me get into the union. Just understanding, I was like, oh yeah, there's so much more than entertainment news magazine. And I've been with Extra, honestly, off and on for 20 years. Whenever they need somebody, I help them staff. I help out on the show, whatever. It's like coming home. It's like a little reunion. But that's literally how my transition from Iowa to LA happened. And I remember that was before, that was when you could still check 2 bags and they could be incredibly heavy, right?
Yeah.
And I packed the crap out of that suitcase, both of them. And then I remember I had my salon and I kept the salon for a year and I would fly back every other week to do clients, and it was a grind. And then all of my employees were getting really bitchy with me. And then I was like, okay, the jealousy is rearing the ugly head. I need to be mindful. And that's when I made the decision, okay, I'm going to just go ahead and sell this. And I'm going to completely move my situation out west and stay in LA. And after a year, I sold it. Two of my employees are still at the salon, and I see them all the time. Every time I go home, I always check in on them. I let them, I'll have a haircut, I'll lunch or whatever. But it's really awesome for them to see my progress as well.
Yeah.
And they were like, we knew you weren't going to be in Iowa for long. And everybody seemed to know that except for me.
I get that. Yeah.
And people would be like, why are you still here? And I'm like, well, my family's here. And at this time in my life, I'm supposed to be here. And when it's not that time, I won't be. So,
right.
And that's truly how the transition happened.
Well, I mean, and clearly that was how the universe had it planned, consciously or unconsciously, because, you know, and you leaning into it and you going with the flow, but you had all the things in alignment. You had, you know, you were prepared. You had your work ethic. You had your structure. You had your practice in place. You knew what it was like to be accountable, set goals, and see them through. You knew what it was like to lead. You knew what it was like to inspire. You knew what it was like to be inspired. You knew how it was to listen and follow, but to jump in when needed to, because you learned how to participate. So you had all of your tool belt ready to go.
Ready to go.
And that's a really important thing, because as you and I both know, observing lots of peers in the business, there are a lot of peers who are super, super talented.
There are.
But they may not have all their ducks in a row and know how to sustain that.
Right.
Through life's ups and downs. And through life's ups and downs, you got to keep it together in a business sense. Correct. No matter what, shit is hitting the fan.
True words.
Right? So you get here, Extra does a thing, Ryan picks you up, American Idol starts as a little, nobody knows what this show is.
And it blew up. And that's when I was like, oh, wow. And I'm the department head I've never been a department head before. And it's a whole, and no one could tell me how to be a department head for competition reality because no one knew how to do it. Yeah. And so I just did what my mother told me to do, and I participated. I stepped up, and it was a really incredibly fun, exciting time for me. And I remember I'm kind of that, 7-year itch person. Yeah. Like after 7 years, I have to mix it up within the same industry. Yeah. And I was at Idol, and it started to become, to me, it felt kind of manufactured. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't as authentic as it was in the beginning, because nobody knew. Do you know what I mean? Nobody knew the process. There wasn't something set in stone. There wasn't a manual to follow. There was none of that, standard operating procedure for this, whatever. Just get the hair done. This is the theme. Follow, blah, blah, blah. Did that. So I think it was season 6, 7. I was like, I'm kind of, feeling it. And I had been with Ryan for probably 10 years as a personal, which was a great experience. It's something I never want to do again, because I felt so limited as to what I could do. But at that time in my life, it was awesome. And I traveled a ton with him for Idol. But then I was approached by a company called Trey Milano. And they really wanted, they knew, they had heard of me because I was the transforming guy on Idol that would transform Kelly Clarkson, Carrie Underwood, Catherine all of these people. Yeah. And they wanted me to be connected and attached to a new opportunity, new venture with a hair tool. And that's when we started to create the InStyler, which is the rotating curling iron, available at Bed Bath & Beyond, Ulta, Target, Walmart, Sears, and Amazon Prime. Just saying. Phenomenal tool, by the way. Phenomenal. Thank you. And, and it was a whole new world for me, because I had never helped do electronics. I mean, Matrix, yes, we worked wet goods. We worked on new shampoos and different things of that nature, but never a tool. And I remember the very first time when I signed the contract to help with the ergonomic development of it, I had to go to this undisclosed location. Like it was so secretive. They had security there. No one was allowed in. I had to sign my NDAs before I went in. And I had never seen the tool. And it was the working prototype. It was so heavy. It was so heavy. And I remember there was this little African-American girl, and she was so adorable. And she looked at me like, oh my God, are you going to touch my hair?
Right.
And it was a great, beautiful natural texture. And I took one section and I started to glide it through her hair. She was just as shocked as I was at what it did to her hair and the transformation. Yeah. And I took that one pass through the hair, and I'm like, all right, where do I sign?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that need to be changed about it, because dude, there was no temperature regulation. Like I was testing it on tissue paper, and then I'd unplug it and then fan it. And that was just during the like that was my first experience with it. And they had me do her entire head, and it was awesome. And she was loving it. Yeah. Loving it. And I remember she was in like, I think she might've been like later elementary school. Like she was a young girl and so dang cute. And just the transformation of her attitude alone was so empowering and so awesome. And that's when I started. And a little naively, I thought I was just going to help develop this product, but they were like, oh no, we want you to be the spokesperson as well. So I had to go through media training. I had never been on camera before, and I had never done an infomercial before, which is a whole different animal. Yeah. And, and understanding your talking points and your sound bites, and, every product line, every manufacturer, they have their, if you will, verbiage, and it's it's how they create the imaging and so on and so forth. And so we're doing this infomercial, and I remember I asked Kimberly Locke, who was on season 2 of Idol, if she would be a model. Besties, we got along so incredibly well, and she was part of the infomercial, and we had a ton of fun. And when that infomercial started airing, it blew up. I can't even tell you how many countries I was dubbed in, which I sound like an aggressive lesbian in German, just FYI, which I'm fine with, whatever, it's all good. And then they were like, oh, you know what? We want to sell it on QVC. And I was like, oh man, QVC, quality, value, and convenience. And so I go out, and I'll never forget, my first show is 8 minutes, and everything on QVC is DPM, dollar per minute. If you don't make $1 per minute, you're not coming back on. Yeah. And I remember I was so nervous, and I have my IFB in my ear, so the booth can talk to me. And I have 3 models. My first model is Helen. At that time, I think she was in her late 60s, early 70s, and she had short hair, and she wanted the bump in the crown. And so and Lisa Robertson was the host, and I remember I turned Helen, and I am like, I feel like I'm a pro because I'm looking at the monitor, but they're, and watching what the viewer's seeing. And I'm like, the first set of brushes aligns the hair so it passes evenly over the polishing barrel, just to give you the beautiful bump. And when I pulled it out, that hair stayed in a perfect bump. And that's when, oh my God, that's when things got crazy, because my earbud, the booth is like, bump Helen again, the calls are spiking. And I was like, what the F is a call spike? Like, I didn't know any of these terms. And I was like, I'm trying to act like I don't have voices in my head because nobody can see the IFB. And I'm just like, and I remember Lisa Robertson, she was like, oh, let's move on to the next model. No, we're going to bump Helen again. And there was a time clock. And I remember, I think I had 8 minutes on the clock, and I just kept all I could think of was I had to sell $2,500 a minute for 8 consecutive minutes, or I'm done. Yeah. And so I'm bumping Helen, and I still have two more models, and I'm already at like minute 7. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to get through these. And then I started to go over the time. And when I get nervous, I just smile and do hair. It's not up to me to sell this tool. That's the job of the host. All I'm doing is educating and informing. And I always had to tell myself that. And at minute marker 12, she goes, we're sold out. And I was like, okay, I'm assuming that's a good thing. But I don't know what the number is we started with. I don't know if I needed to sell out just to break even to get back. And so I came off that stage sweating like I had just ran a marathon in 12 minutes. And then I go to the green room and I start looking at my numbers. And I had averaged over $4,200 a minute for 12 consecutive minutes and blew other people. I was number 1 in the show. And from that moment on, I was at QVC legit every other week or every 3 weeks for a ton of shows. And then it did so well QVC US, they wanted me to do QVC UK, Germany, Italy, and France. And so for 4 years of my life, every other month I was international doing hair. Hair's a universal language for sure.
Yeah.
And it was literally, I'm not going to lie, one of the best times of my life because we were having fun. Sales were doing really incredibly well. And it was an accomplishment, you know? And so once you accomplish something that you're fearful of, it gives you so much self-confidence and so much power. And it was just an awesome experience. And then, you know, doing that, I wasn't doing any TV shows because it just consumed me. Yeah. And so then I went back into the world of TV hair. And I remember I started.
What year was that?
It was, let's see, 2009.
Okay.
It was probably I'd say around 20, I'd say 13, 14.
Okay.
And I was just kind of day playing on Dancing with the Stars and different shows. And then started working, you know, on the team for So You Think You Can Dance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm becoming like a dance hairdresser, which is a whole different world. It's a whole different way to do hair.
Yes.
You have the anchor, locking, attachment, all of those things. And then I just continued in that niche. And then American Idol asked me to come back. So I went back to American Idol. And then I took over So You Think You Can Dance. And then they added World of Dance. And then I was on the main team for Dancing with the Stars. And, you know, it's been a really awesome career. But I found, and this was probably, I don't know, my realization during the COVID quarantine.
Yeah.
Where, you know what, I don't need to run 25 to 30 shows in a year. My main goal has always been to win an Emmy, because I swear to you, I will, you know, being in a family of 15, you got to do something to stand out. And so I was like, I am going to win an Emmy. And, you know, recently I was like, why, you know, that's my main goal. And that's really been a focus. But then why am I taking shows where I'm never going to get a nomination?
Mm.
You know what I mean? And it's not a waste of my time. It's a wasted opportunity for someone else that would love to work on a game show or would love to work on one of those shows to get their wings and to really establish themselves within the industry. And so that's been my main focus, is just to take shows that challenge me and my creativity and push me to create different, unique things for shows. And that's kind of where my alignment is right now. And I have never felt more content.
Was that not an incredible conversation that I'm so excited to share with you? You have to tune in for next week's, for the last hour of Dean and my conversation on the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast, where we continue this very authentic, insightful, funny, and just great perspective on professional and personal life choices, decisions that's made, and the being prepared and the opportunities that present, and the reflections that come from a lifetime of dedication. So I really look forward to you joining, subscribing, sharing. This is where we have connection and conversation. This is the reason for this amazing platform where we come around the campfire, where we sit, we listen, we laugh, we learn, and we connect through conversation. Much love. Join me next week for the continuation of part 2 with my conversation with Dean Banowetz on the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast. Much love. Thank you for joining. Bye for now.
The thing for me with younger people getting out of beauty school, you have to work, because there's so many times people, I mean, what we do in the industry is far from glamorous. We have a lot of fun opportunities, but it's a lot of work. And I've had assistants that are like, oh, that's too much. I can't do that. And I go, and that's okay. And then this industry probably isn't for you. And others are like, yes, they jump in feet first and they are just running. I'm going to be the first one there and the last one to leave. And I was like that for many, many years. And it was really good for me and my career and just learning. And there's been a lot of times where, you know, you hire people for a union show and you have expectations, and you're not always fulfilled with those expectations of that person. I'm very mindful and very aware. And I've had other people who go, oh, I don't know how to do that. And I go, do you want to learn? And they're like, yes, teach me. And then it changes the atmosphere. And it's like, yes, you're doing an amazing job. This is something that's really awesome. There's many ways to do it. This is the way I do it because I found it works really easy for me. And, you know, when you have someone, and I just don't want to beat it to ground, but like my mother says, when you participate and you have people who want to participate, things happen and magic is created.
So excited for you to join me this week on part 2 Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast with my dear friend and guest, Dean Banowetz. Dean is a hair designer, educator, innovator, and entrepreneur. And listen in as we have this authentic conversation, our continued conversation from last week's drop about the showing up, the willingness to learn, the willingness to share information, and the legacy one is leaving, and the importance of life and balance as we know it today. I look forward to you joining us. Take a pull up a log. Here we go.
Once you accomplish something that you're fearful of, it gives you so much self-confidence and so much power. And it was just an awesome experience. And then, you know, doing that, I wasn't doing any TV shows because it just consumed me. Yeah. And so then I went back into the world of TV hair. And I remember I started.
What year was that?
It was, let's see, 2009.
Okay.
It was probably I'd say around 20, I'd say 13, 14. And I
Okay.
was just kind of day playing on Dancing with the Stars and different shows. And then started working, on the team for So You Think You Can Dance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm becoming like a dance hairdresser, which is a whole different world. It's a whole different way to do hair. You have
Yes.
the anchor, locking, attachment, all of those things. And then um, I just continued in that niche. And then American Idol asked me to come back. So I went back to American Idol. And then I took over So You Think You Can Dance. And then they added World of Dance. And then I was on the main team for Dancing with the Stars. And it's been a really awesome career. But I found, and this was probably, I don't know, my realization during the COVID quarantine,
Yeah.
where, I don't need to run 25 to 30 shows in a year. My main goal has always been to win an Emmy, because I swear to you, I will, being in a family of 15, you got to do something to stand out. And so I was like, I am going to win an Emmy. And, recently I was like, why, that's my main goal. And that's really been a focus. But then why am I taking shows where I'm never going to get a nomination?
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's not a waste of my time. It's a wasted opportunity for someone else that would love to work on a game show, or would love to work on one of those shows to get their wings and to really establish themselves within the industry. And so that's been my main focus, is just to take shows that challenge me and my creativity and push me to create different, unique things for shows. And that's kind of where my alignment is right now. And I have never felt more content.
So that's very interesting. So this epiphany, so to speak, came to you during the pandemic, when, let's face it, entertainment industry shut down. And it shut down like whatever stream of income you had. I don't care if you even had multiple streams of income, because you and I both have spaces attached to our homes,
right,
where we see clients, all that stuff. But even then, I don't know about you, I'll speak for myself, going back to being a little girl, I was always the girl that did follow the rules. So I was like, man, I'm not challenging my license. Personally, I know clients need things, so how am I going to solve this problem? I happen to do it through a color product line that I use that does not use peroxide, that's all water activated. So I immediately, when the country shut down, I was like, okay, I know I don't do this computer stuff so well, and we don't do social media and all that, but I'm going to go there, and I'm going to start to FaceTime with people, and also, to be frank with you, and I think we probably had this kind of conversation, being that my love is hair, and yes, I love makeup, but being that I came into the industry doing both at the same time, and then when the union stuff came about, I happened to just be on a show, i.e. Mad TV, that went union. I was a key makeup artist. That's how that got decided, because I was ready to go in the hair end. So nobody knew that I did hair the way I did hair. Long story short, go forward, you're doing your thing, pandemic hits. I've always been doing clients, but now I'm going to go a little bit more public. And you speak about the jealousy and all the things. Well, forgive me, but our little known industry is not it's kind of like the crabs in the bucket, as I describe it.
Right.
The crab trying to get out of the bucket or do something better, all the crabs want to pull them down. So I had to get past all those limited beliefs that I felt I was being faced with. And having had this product that I knew I could just hear around the country, women are going, how the hell am I going to cover these grays? What am I going to do? My hairdresser doesn't have the capability, because that hairdresser who rents a chair in a salon gets their products from the person who owns a salon. They're not even backing all that. They have they're not set up. So I ended up doing this thing where I literally would consult like this, consult, custom blend a product, and literally drop ship it to their front door.
Love that.
And then do a consultation like this, where they'd have to apply it while I walked them through it. And they would have their hair colored. And that was, to me, solving a problem in the initial time. And within those first 2 or 3 months, that was working until people could get back into the salons.
Sure.
It didn't solve the world problems. It solved problems for just me getting some cash flow, people feeling satisfied, people feeling heard, so forth. During the pandemic, I feel that that was for any one of us who were like thinking people. It did make you step back and go, what's my purpose and what's my passion and what's important?
Yes.
And
I finally got to live in my house.
Correct.
I wasn't on set for 12 hours a day.
And you love your house.
I love my house even more now.
Yeah, same.
And it did help, for me, because right after we got back to work, I completely refied my house, which was great because I hadn't done it in 17 years because the interest rates were never attractive.
Yeah.
And so that was a game changer for me with just the mortgage amount, and just it would free up some time, to pursue some other avenues as well.
Yeah. Well, and pursuing other avenues and not running yourself ragged and trying to be the pleaser, because let's face it, whether it's because you're the 13th child, God willing, lucky, or you're in the army, or you're with blue hair ladies, or you're, trying to find your way in LA in entertainment. There's and serving clients, be it personal, celebrity, or the everyday person who just says, I would love you to,
Right.
magically transform me. You're still a form of a pleaser.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Because at the end of the day, we're in service. We're in a service.
Completely. So it comes to a point where we're excellent at pleasing others. Are we pleasing ourselves? So here the pandemic comes, and you have this moment of space and time, and I don't know how quiet it was for you.
It was
or how quiet you chose to make it. And then you have these revelations. So what started to influence you at that point?
Well, it's being because nobody obviously knew how long the quarantine was going to be. And that the first 2 weeks, I don't think I've ever slept so much in my life. Mm-hmm. Where I would literally shut my phone off and not set an alarm. And I would just wake up when my body wanted to get up. Mm-hmm. And after 2 weeks, I felt better. Mm-hmm. And I was like, there has to be a balance. Mm-hmm. And, what is feeding your soul? Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, do I really want to work on set from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m.? No, I don't. Because guess what? I could do 2 clients and make more money than I'm going to make that day on a set.
Yes.
And so when and I'm grateful for, the healthcare and the pension and all of those things.
Yes.
But I'm also mindful of my body and living my life and taking it into a different direction that actually feeds me. And that's another reason why I love this industry, because I've been in it for over 30 years and I've done so many different things within the realm of being a cosmetologist.
Yes.
And, growing up in Iowa and being at Bill Hill's College of Cosmetology, at that time, I thought my only option was supercuts.
Yeah.
And I love my mom would say, as long as there's supercuts, you will always have a job if you want to work. because there's people who don't want to work and they won't have a job, but you're
Right.
motivated enough that you will find a place to work. It might not be your end all be all, but you will always work. And that's why I love this industry too. And recently, in the past year and a half, I've shifted a lot because I lecture to anywhere from 10 to 20,000 students a year at different beauty colleges throughout the US. And I get the same questions. How can I do what you do?
Mm-hmm.
What do you look for in an assistant? And when you start to look around within our realm, within our industry, a lot of people are not very proactive to give advice to people.
No, they're not.
And my thing, and I've been clowned on before by fellow hair people in the industry going, why would you do that? Why would you give that information away? And my answer is like, why wouldn't I? I
Right.
go, they're going to take your job. And I go, there's only one Dean.
Right.
Anybody can do hair, but there's only one you. Why
Right.
are you special? What do you bring to the table? I don't care about them. All I am is giving them guidance. Whether they
Right.
choose to use it or not and participate is up to them.
Right.
But when you give it away, you get it back tenfold in other areas as well.
Right. Right.
And so that's when I decided to do the online training program and just do online classes. I have one right now, the Dean's List of the beauty business, because people have questions. And
Mm-hmm.
when we started, it was either New York or LA,
Yeah.
maybe Chicago. But now, oh my gosh, there's Miami, there's Atlanta, there's Nashville, and in each one of those areas, they're doing so many different things. So if you want to work in TV, you don't have to be in New York or LA. There
No.
are so many different options, and so many people they're not aware of that. And they're like, but why don't you go to Atlanta? And I go, because I love the life that I've created here.
Yeah.
I don't have children and I'm not married, so I don't need to worry about a school district that I'm going to send my kids to or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And so it literally depends on what roadmap you want to create for yourself, and just having the tools and the knowledge to make that constructive decision yourself.
Yes.
You can create whatever it is you want to create, providing you have some concepts and ideas of where to go and what's going to be expected of you.
So speaking of the shifts that have occurred in the industry because of being here in LA, and you got here in 2000, I got here in 92. When I got here, having had my career that started in Chicago, where I started my career there in film, I had my own photo studio. New York had the Eastern bordered states, all 13 Eastern bordered states in the Union. Chicago had a 100-mile radius, and LA had the rest of the country. And there hadn't been yet this runaway, as they call it, runaway business.
Right.
And if you wanted to be in entertainment, you had to be in a union, most likely. Doesn't mean you couldn't do non-union work, because most of us start in non-union work. That's how you get into union work. But now, because there are so many communities of work, which is fantastic, but you talk to people who are out of these main LA or New York, and we're in the United States. You technically, and things are shifting within the hair world. I mean, let's face it, you and I went through education for 2,100 hours. I in Illinois, you in Iowa. Now California's just passed a law that it only takes 1,000 hours for somebody to get licensed and to go out into the world and do what they do.
Correct.
And you and I both know, even with getting your license, plenty of people walk out after 2,100 hours and they're not ready to have a clientele. Mm-hmm. You know that, and I know that. And I know when I got out, I did not want to sweep floors and wash hair. I wanted to build a clientele, and I wanted to get to business. And thankfully, I was allowed to do that because of the people that I was aligned with. but most people don't know how to solve problems. They don't know how to work with outside of one hair color line. You know, they haven't accomplished lifting a head of hair with bleach. They don't know everything from clipper cuts to, having an artistic, intuitive instinct of being fashionably forward. And then you bring it into the entertainment world. And this is not being negative. We're just having a very real, guided, educational conversation.
Right.
You know, what do you say to people who are everything from our peers to people who are just learning and barely, they're in school or coming out? What do you say to people?
Well, listen, one of the biggest things for me is, and I'm going to just relate it to this online, course academy stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And, because so many people, we're at home, it's something you can do online, all of that. My ultimate goal is, I should backtrack. When I'm doing stuff on set, and I'll have another union hairdresser come up to me, I'm like, oh my God, how did you do that? Can you show me? And I just assume that if you're doing this,
Right.
I feel like every hairdresser is the same. I know that's the wrong thinking, but I feel like when you're in the union, you should have some sort of extended knowledge about everything. You don't have to be a specialist in everything, but have just an understanding of buildings, construction, attachment, all of that sort of thing. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, maybe I should just open this training program up to some senior people as well. Because I love learning. I love to take a class. It doesn't matter who you are. If that process intrigues me, I'm all about it. Because whenever you want to stop learning, you can stop in the career, because that's the key for me.
Or stop breathing.
Yeah, you just have to continue to want to learn.
Yeah.
And the thing for me with younger people getting out of beauty school, you have to work, because there's so many times people, what we do in the industry is far from glamorous.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of fun opportunities, but it's a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had assistants that are like, oh, that's too much. I can't mm-hmm. do that. And I go, and that's okay. And then this industry probably isn't for you.
Mm-hmm.
And others are like, yes, they jump in feet first and they are just running. I'm going to be the first one there and the last one to leave. And I was like that for many, many years. And it was really good for me and my career and just learning. And there's been a lot of times where, you hire people for a union show and you have expectations, and you're not always fulfilled with those expectations of that person.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember the first time I hired a person, it wasn't the first time hiring this particular person, and I just needed them to do a braid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a braid is very simple.
Mm-hmm.
And they had no clue how to do a braid. And I was mm-hmm. like, then it just throws a red flag up for me. And I was like, well, you know what? Do you want to learn? And they were like, not really. And I go, okay, then that tells me about the person.
Right.
And then I put a little do not hire next to that name, so I'm more prepared. Because
right.
If you wanted to learn, we would have taught you then and there.
Yeah.
To give you a new skill. And they just were flat out, no, I'm good. And they go, okay. Okay.
Right.
And then it puts more stress on other people. So I'm very mindful and very aware. And I've had other people who go, oh, I don't know how to do that. And I go, do you want to learn? And they were like, yes, teach me. And then it changes the atmosphere. And it's like, yes, you're doing an amazing job. This is something that's really awesome. There's many ways to do it. This is the way I do it because I found it works really easy for me. And, when you have someone, and I just don't want to beat it to ground, but like my mother says, when you participate and you have people who want to participate, things happen and magic is created. I hate when I go on sets where the hair department doesn't talk to the makeup department. I don't know how a show works like that. And every show that I am ever on, I have a tight relationship with hair and makeup and wardrobe, because it is up to the three of us to really create magic and beauty
Yeah.
and, to create profound looks and
Yes.
have fun. That's what we're here for.
Well, you just said something, and it is really interesting because I've had both experiences where the creative collaboration is just it's just so intertwined. I mean, because I started out in the non-union world and I was designing hair and makeup. Well, that was that, and then I worked with wardrobe and costumes, and that was just what it was. And I had even started out as a stylist, so I just had great respect for interaction, and I was a trained filmmaker, a trained storyteller. So why wouldn't we be collaborating? This is what we're doing. It's a collaborative art. Why wouldn't you be communicating with each other? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? So I found it over the years, as that dissension started to reveal its unfortunate, what I refer to as not ugly head, but just like, who are you? Why are you even doing this business if you don't want to talk to people, if you don't want to be kind, if you don't want to be giving, if I am your enemy and I barely walked in a trailer and you and I have never interacted, how does this work?
It doesn't.
No, it does not. And I just found that I just want to find my tribe.
Yeah, for sure.
And I know what a tribe is like, and it's inclusive. It's not exclusive.
One of the things that I talk about a lot, and they're like, oh, they think it's just you and your own creativity. And people don't realize that you go through the creative director, you have the EPs to deal with, you have the network to deal with, you have the production company to deal with, and you have producers who want to have an input on not their job. And so the thing for me, and the one thing I'll use So You Think You Can Dance as an example. I have an 80-20 rule. As long as I'm happy with 80% of my creative, I will happily bend on 10% for makeup, 10% for wardrobe. And just case in point, we have a creative opportunity, and it's up to us to create this magic. We'll have, the theme, whatever, a snow globe comes to life. That's our creative concept. Go with it from there. And I go to wardrobe and I'm like, what do you have in mind for the collar? They go, oh, I'd really love to do a high feather collar. Awesome. That means I have to have the hair up.
Right.
Go to makeup. Hey, what do you guys think? What are you thinking about for looks? Oh, wardrobe is going to be doing some lace stuff, and I want to do lace appliques. I go, awesome. Hair has to be off the face. So now I know that this is 80% of my creative component, and what I do up here is up to me. Because I've bent on 10% for makeup and 10% for wardrobe, so they can create what they want to create.
Yes.
And it's so funny because, and I think it's from family of 15, you just got to get along and you figure a way out to make it all work for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's 80-20. I want to be happy and comfortable with at least 80% of the creative that I can bring to the table. And every single time we've had to bend, it's always been magical. And it's always worked because now every department feels heard and seen. And listen, at the end of the day, we just want acceptance and acknowledgement and
to be loved and appreciated.
I mean, that's the deal. And, at the end of a show, we're like, good job, everyone. And when the executives come back, oh my gosh, everybody looked, well, yeah, because we worked together.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the funny thing is people don't realize how transparent it is when it comes to our departments. If we are either seamlessly going down that train track together versus everybody's in their corners. And excuse me, how do you not know that this isn't smelling like shit right now? It's an energy thing. And how did you get taught Did you not get taught learning to live together is the answer to all things? Did you not get taught how to play in the sandbox? That goes back to a very early point in our conversation. Did you not get taught how to share the ball?
Right.
Did you not get taught how to raise each other up? And not just take because you decided it was for you to take. This is a give and a take so we can raise each other up and accomplish. And by the way, we got millions and millions of dollars riding on our shoulders every time we step onto these jobs.
Every time.
But most people, Dean, and I think you would agree with this, most of our peers never think of it from a business perspective that way.
Oh.
They're just like, do I look cute and do I have all the pins that I need or the makeup brushes? No, it's not about that.
Right.
It's such a much bigger picture. And look at, I mean, I love that that's what people think, but I come into it like thinking like an executive producer, like how am I going to make this something that people want to talk about in a good way? How am I going to make it where they never had to think twice about what I was showing up doing because I was 10 steps ahead.
Well,
and how I go ahead.
The thing to also really honestly take into consideration is you want to work smarter but more effectively. And so within your department, and I'll just take again so you think, you've got 10 contestants. Each contestant has 3 numbers, 3 different looks. So every single person that's on my team, and I might come across as a drill sergeant, but it's all in love. And I'm like, what are you going to do to hairstyle number 1 that's going to make hairstyle number 2 and 3 work? What is your roadmap?
Yeah.
And talk me through it. Because if there's something where I can help and align it differently. So let's just, I'll take you for example. Let's say you're a dancer and we know your first look is going to be a period look and we're going to put you into a finger waved wig. So we're going to have to do a hair wrap or whatever it is for the wig. All right. So number 2, competition dance number 2 is going to be contemporary classic, where they want a texture and they want emotion and movement. All right, we got that established. And your third style is going to be ballroom, and it has to be structured and it has to be established. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a scalp braid, a cornrow, a Dutch braid, whatever you want to call it, a tiny one, 1/4 inch from crown to nape. And we're just going to hide it in there. Nobody's going to see it. The next thing we're going to do is take your hair and we're going to do a cute figure 8 pin curl. We're going to pin curl your entire head and we get you set for a wig wrap. Right? Get your wig cap on. And now everything works effectively. So you do your first number, we take that wig off, we drop those pins out, and mind you, it's a live show. We take those pins out. So now you have this beautiful undulating figure 8 wave texture. We take the side panels, braid them, attach them in the back, and then sew them to that cornrow. So when you're dancing and you flip up, it doesn't flip over and hit you in the face. And you come off stage and we take that braid down, we brush the hair out, and we start to put it in a structured French twist. Because that cornrow is there, we now have something to sew it to and pin it to. So fundamentally, it's not going to move. And that is your roadmap of hair. And I've had so many hairdressers come up to me after a show and go, this show is giving me life back for hairdressing. And I go, you have to use critical thinking to make your job easier and more seamless so we can accomplish it. And it just forces you to think differently about the process of what you're doing so we can all work together. Because if you know exactly what to do, we can help you. Because now you can give us guidance on your map that you've planned out for yourself.
Correct. Well, and what you just talked about was like getting a 4-year college degree, but in application. Right. And I think for people who come from live shows, like a dance competition show, like So You Think You Can Dance, or coming from sketch comedy, even though I came from feature film and fashion, sketch comedy to me, whether it was live, taped, or both, absolutely in your costume changes, just like you You had to deliver when your actress and actors were going through 3 and 4 and 5 characters in one night in an hour show. You had to deliver, and you had to have that planned out.
Right.
And there was no messing it up. And what I found was really interesting was when I first got into the union, and this was after now, I think I had 7 to 10 years experience between Chicago and my first 3 years here. And I had already been personal to people, and I'd already headed up a lot of projects. But I saw lots of people in both departments who did not know a front lace wig, did not know contemporary blowouts, did not know how to finger wave, did not know how to remove an eyebrow, did not know how to do lots of different things. And it wasn't a judgment, it was just an observation. And these were people who were working, and I thought, how does this work? How do people get in here, and how are these people working all the time? And what makes the success of a career? And there lies a big gapping question, because you have extraordinary foundation. I'd like to think I have extraordinary foundation, but I'm also going to talk about something very straight up. You're a 6'4" man. When you beyond when you give instruction, there is just something that's respected about that. When a 5'4" female gives instruction, I'd like to think that is respected as well. But in our society and in a lot of places, that's just not always, the ice cream doesn't go down the same way.
That is correct.
So that is a very different, now we're talking about different trajectories. Okay, I don't look at myself as behind the 8 ball, but that's a reality check. But I also don't want to go through life being considered a bitch.
Right.
I don't get joy out of that when I'm really trying to help us get from point A to point Z. And then I also see that there are a lot of people who don't want to be told what to do. Well, I also don't want to micromanage you.
Right.
But if I need to help get this train across to the next port, it might be that that's what has to happen. Especially if you're not taking on your own initiative, which we talked about early on in this conversation. Take initiative.
It's what it's about. And the thing too is I'm very clear in terms of the show that we're working on. For example, World of Dance. Every group has a choreographer. They're the executive producers of that number. Yeah. So they have input. They have a specific look they want. So when I'm talking to my team, I'm like, here's the inspo concept from the choreographer. As long as we stay in this vein, we're good to go. But when I look over and you're doing something completely different because it's your concept, we have to have a reality check because it is not your concept.
Yeah.
You are an integral part of a vision that's not necessarily yours.
Yeah.
So if you're the creative captain, then awesome. But you're not the creative captain on this particular show.
Yeah.
So I established that right up front. Don't take it personally. And one thing that always kind of gets me too is, we have rehearsals. We have rehearsals for a reason. Do you know what I'm saying? And so, the thing is when I have a hairdresser goes, but do we need to do this all during rehearsal? And I go, yeah, that's why it's a rehearsal. It's a live show. If we mess up during the rehearsal, then we can course correct. We can make the changes that need to happen. We can't do that during a live show. And it's so funny to me when people ask, do we need to do the changes for the rehearsal? Yeah, we do.
So let me ask you something. In your 30 years, but more importantly, since you arrived in 2000 and then started Idol and going forward, what have been your observations? You work with some extraordinary old school classic trained people.
Yep.
And you work with a lot of people who've had no experience.
Correct.
And your observation of where we are in the trajectory of the business and the business of talent and how people are showing up as a package. Like what is your observation? I'm sure it's fairly positive, but I want it to be real.
Well, that I'll relate this to Legendary, which is a show on HBO Max. I don't run the show. Geraldine Stevens is the department head, and Kimmy Messina is the key. And I feel like I'm kind of the unofficial third or fourth because I'm there all the time, and I love the input and I love the creative nature of it all. But what I love about that show is we are celebrated for our specialty. Like for me, I'm an embellisher. Like I love to take a style and take it to the next level in ways that you wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't be able to do that before. Am I a great finger waver? Yeah, I can nail it if I need to. But if there's somebody else who can do it in their sleep, yes, let's utilize that talent. So I get a wig that's been finger waved and it is solid. And they bring it to me because then I jewel the the C shapings and because I want it to play to the back row and the audience. And there's one guy who, worked for Disney for years, and his character wigs are epic. And it's a show where you work together to create. And there was one girl this season and I go, hey, do you need help with that? And she goes, oh, no, I can do this myself. And I go, I have no doubt you can do it yourself. But I just want to let you know, this show is collaborative. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because that was a prep day. There were no contestants there. The day of the show, she was like, oh crap, I need some backup. Because we worked together and you have to be comfortable in your own skin to accept help. And I think that's the start, because we all have our specialties, talents, and so on and so forth. Yeah. But the thing too is, like, I want you to feel comfortable enough to go to someone else and go, hey, could you help me with this? I'm kind of struggling with this process. And sometimes that troubleshooting, if you will, is such an important part of what we do. I remember on Dancing with the Stars, Gail Ryan, she's amazing. I have so much respect for her. And I'm like, Gail, can you teach me how you do that thermal, like finger wave, like style? And she was like, absolutely, let's do this. And so when someone's freely available to give you that knowledge and share something that they're really amazing at, I'm not going to say I'm never going to be as good as Gail, but if I want to, I have to put in the work and I have to participate. Yeah. And when someone gives of that knowledge freely, just accept it and know that this too shall pass. Because listen, we need to pass on the craft to other people. Yeah. That's why I love this show, because we work together so well, and a lot of times we show up to work and I'm like, oh, well, I need to build Pippi Longstocking braids or ponytails that stick out. All right, how can I reverse engineer this? How can I make it work? What's my foundation? And it makes you think differently about that process. And I mean, it should be a hair challenge show because it's insane and the stuff we do is crazy. But I love that we get to work together and we're like, you know what, this isn't working. Oh no, crisscross this, it's amazing. It'll help with structure and all, and so on and so forth. And it's just be mindful, be kind, and be open to a new process. We don't know everything ourselves. We're here for each other too.
I think that's a really good application to life, and it's a really good application of business. I think that what has surprised me, I think it really does come down to individuals. I never walked into this business being competitive or thinking that I was being egotistical, but I definitely think that we are surrounded by people who are very competitive and very ego driven. And look, I'm not saying I'm without ego. We all have egos. There's a big that's a given. Um, but I definitely have been taught that this is what's important, that you are only as good as the whole community that comes with you. And the only person you're in competition with is yourself, to show up and be the best you can be and how much you can contribute in that moment or moments collectively.
Right.
And the rest is like, get out of the way and just show up and deliver. So when I come up against energies that are not willing and are like brick walls, and no matter how many different ways I try to come in through that wall, I'm either like, what? Well, how am I going to solve this problem? What do you do in that situation?
Well, I've been fortunate enough to be able, anytime I've been on a project where there's a lot of resistance, I always have to remember that resistance is because of some sort of insecurity.
Correct.
And it could be their personal, it could be something completely different. And that is their stuff to work through. Mm-hmm. I acknowledge it. And all I can do is kill with kindness, because I can't make you do anything you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. But if it's my show, I'm going to be mindful of who I'm going to hire, because I want to hire people that are worker friendly and they can work together. And I think that's really important, because people pay attention. And when you're working on shows where it's very collaborative, we only have space for open minds.
Yeah.
And truly, I think that starts from me as a department head. I have to have an open mind, because I might have a whole concept for you to do on this, and they might go, oh, you know what? I've done something like this before. Maybe this will work. And I'm like, yes, I am all for that. If it fits within the creative realm,
yeah,
and the creative time we have to do it,
yeah,
yes, 100%. Yeah. But then, you know, when you come up against the resistance, oh, I don't know how to braid. I don't want to know how to braid. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a long day and probably your last, because I want to be surrounded by yes people who want to participate, who want to learn. And, you know, and listen, a braid is a braid. Somebody can step up and we can make that happen. But then I also feel like, what area could you step up in of a specialty skill that you can contribute?
100%. And listen, there's not a better feeling. I have literally cried out of joy to see the finished collaborative product that we as a team have created. It is a high. I have literally said I could die today and feel like I rose to the occasion, right, because of what we are seeing before our eyes. You know, it's like envisioning something before it ever got executed. It's when I come into spaces, I've especially found, and I don't know what, I think it's more in this last decade, Dean, to be perfectly honest, there's something energetically I feel that has shifted, and I never walk into a room thinking, oh, it's not going to be a good situation. No, on the contrary, I'm excited and passionate and don't want anything other than to be that. But I don't know what and I've heard this a lot, so this is like, I feel like I'm representing for a lot of people, that something has shifted, and I'm not sure what it is, that people are less willing to be yes, less willing to be open, think that they have all the answers, get jealous beyond, so they're now going to make it more challenging. And I'm just like, what are you doing here? Like, how do you like bully people or not treat people well when they're all here because supposedly they're capable and they just want to show up and take care of the job that they've been hired for, but also more importantly, because maybe they have a family to take care of, maybe they've got goals. Like, why can't you just work together? And if you're not, I'm sorry, and if you're not always in a position of being the lead person, or maybe you're the personal in a team of people that are like upset that you're the personal, and yet you're not doing anything but solving the problem over here, so you're not a problem. That becomes like conflicting.
And you know, the thing is, we are shifting to a space where people are more comfortable to speak up for themselves also.
Correct.
And I love that, because if you don't speak up, you're never going to get the help that you want. Like I always tell people, if you want something, you've got to ask for it, because nobody can read your mind. Right. And the thing is that's called, and I mean, listen, we've all had our failures, and that failure is just equated to growth in the future. And you don't need to be afraid to express yourself if there's an issue or whatever. I remember one of the girls on So You Think, the hairstyle she did started to fall apart during the dance, and she was a mess. She was upset. She was like, please don't fire me. And I was like, well, why would I fire you? Number one, we're all human.
Yeah.
Number two, right now, you can Google that show for the rest of your life and see it. That's enough for you to have to process. But you know what I know? I know it'll never, ever happen again, because it pushed you to elevate your career and be more mindful of your actions. I'm not, why would I fire you? It's part of archivable history. If you don't take action and make sure it doesn't happen again, then it's on you. It's right. On you. And I try to be as respectful as possible. And I go, but in the future, if you've got a question, ask, because then we can work on things together. And that's more of a senior person who has that ego, who maybe doesn't want to ask. And when they get to the point where it's okay to ask, you're not expected to know everything on your own. And same for me. I'm constantly researching. I'm constantly asking questions and learning how to do things effectively and different. But the thing is if you don't participate and apply them, then it's back on you.
I get that. And you can also participate and help be of service and support. And that might actually make other people insecure. And that might actually make people not want you around. So there is that side of the coin.
Well, and then also, but if they don't want you around, you don't want to be there anyway.
No, you don't.
So move on and find your own huddle up of people who are on the same page.
That's right. And I think that that's a really good lesson to be taught here, because I think that you don't know the environments you're always walking into. That what people don't understand is we basically walk in cold to jobs. And whether you're the department head, you're the key, or you're a day player, that is something that every day is a different day at the office. And every day we all show up, hopefully just being the best person we can be and be the best contributor as a teammate.
The one thing to add to that, is when you day play, every single thing comes from the top. So when I've day played on shows where the department head I've never met, or the key I've never met. Oh, you're going to be here. Here's what you need, but done. And it's such a disconnect. And I would never work on those shows again. But I've gone to shows that I haven't been real thrilled about going to. And it's almost like I've had a red carpet welcome. Oh my God, we have your station set up here. We have products and this works really great. This person loves this product. And let's get everything set up for you. And like, it's so accommodating, and not to the point of nauseum, but it's like welcoming. We are welcoming you to the set. This is new for you. This whole environment is new. And so when I have a department head and key that are like that are so welcoming, it changes my attitude and my mindset automatically. It might not be the caliber of hair I want to do, but you know what? We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to create some really awesome memories, and we're never probably going to forget this show. And I think it's also really important, is to be welcoming.
Well, and what you're talking about is inclusivity. And you're talking about setting the tone for the stage, for these people coming to support you, to help you deliver what you've been hired to deliver for these producers, for this talent. And there's something to be said for that, to be a good communicator and to make people feel welcome, because it either goes one of two ways. People either feel welcome. You might not be doing historical, creative work, but just being a part of it and being able to walk away going, that I will carry forward with me. That's what I want to do for other people. I want to always make sure I make people feel welcome, versus when you show up, you don't ever interact. You don't have communication. You never understand why things went maybe awry or didn't, or how you left, like people have walked out of sets kind of screwed up.
Well, and the thing too is, it's just called being a good human.
Hello. But you and I were raised around good humans.
It seems like it's not rocket science. Treat people the way you want to be treated, and it's going to be a good balance.
I always say this: how would you want your child treated? I don't care if you're a parent or not, but it always goes back to children, or your animals, or the flower. A flower needs to be watered. A baby needs to be fed and coddled. Things need to be, I'm not saying you need to coddle people. I'm just saying, give them a little love. It's amazing how far it will go.
Nurture them.
Just be grateful that they said yes, and that you guys get to go play together.
Love that.
So coming back to all the things that we've discussed in regards to now where you're at, in regards to, you created your online course, which I think is fantastic, and you're making different choices regarding the people or the things, the projects that you're choosing to take, because you're trying to strike a little bit more balance in your life. How is that looking, and how does that feel today?
You know what? It's early on, so there's always the anticipation of it going well. And I say this in a non-narcissistic way. I know that whatever I put my mind to and I'm disciplined, it will work, because it's coming from a genuine, authentic place. And the thing is I've always said, do what you love and the money will follow. Yeah. And it has always been that way. And it's been really awesome. Just the willingness for people to participate and help. And it's funny because I ask for help. Like when I need something, I go, hey, I have this in mind. What are your thoughts on that? And they're like, oh my God, that's awesome. How can I help you do this? And I go, yeah. I love that, because then it's an open conversation. And I feel like when that conversation is open, greatness can really happen authentically. Yeah. And so far, so good. It's been on track, which I love.
Well, and so then in regards to looking forward into your future and what you want your purpose in the world to be and your legacy, what would that look like? I mean, even though we hope that you're on this planet for another 40, 50 or more years, what does that feel like to you? And what are your goals regarding that?
Definitely goals are to really create a platform of open education, an open area, a space to learn. And it's interesting because those are questions that are constantly in my head. And you think legacy. I absolutely want to win an Emmy, and I know I will in my career, and I also want to win it for myself, but I really want to win it for my family. Because they're invested in my career, and they've participated in my career. It's when my high school asked me to come speak be the college, the commencement speaker. And I will never forget, my mom was like, "Oh, it's a bold choice for you," because I wasn't a great student. And I go, "Yeah, but you don't have to be a great student. You just have to be a great person." And she goes, "And you are." But that all feeds the soul, and it gives, a kid in Iowa the chance to go, "Whoa, if that happened to him, it totally could happen to me." And it could. It just changes the mindset, and it just brings about more positivity, and just kind of feeding that through and making things happen. And so if I can be a conduit to greatness in terms of, how you live a better life or how you learn things more effectively, I feel like that's kind of where I am.
Yeah. Well, I think that is, I think if you were coming into, and I don't want to use the pandemic as like a marking point. I think if you came into the pandemic as a good person, hopefully you came out of the pandemic a better person, not because the pandemic's per se behind us yet. And depending on when this drops, but I think we're still dealing with this, sadly. But I think that if you're reflective, and I think if you want to create greatness and do greater things and leave greater things behind, you're coming from a place of, not what can I get for me, but what can I give back? How can I serve? How can I be of raising a community and a world up? What imprint can I leave? My reason for doing this platform, though it was something I wanted to do over 6 years ago, and then life happened, was because I want to create and show the importance of connection and communication. I want to show that we need to come together around the campfire. We need to share thoughts. We need to hear each other. We need to, so when somebody hears this conversation, they will walk away hopefully enlightened as well as entertained, and think from what they've heard. How do I show up?
Or maybe participate in something new.
Correct. And that if inspiring and empowering is something that I can hopefully do while changing people's lives positively, certainly I think you do that. This is why I adore you. And I meant to share with you what I was going to say earlier on. I remember the very first time that you came to a show that I was doing, that you were a contributor on as a contributing guest. And it was the show, The Soap Talk. You remember Soap Talk?
Yes.
We never met each other. I don't even know if we ever discussed this before.
I don't think we have.
I don't think we have. You were contributing, and I remember thinking, who are these people? Never met these people. Certainly I know the show, blah, 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 blah. And I don't remember effectively when our paths crossed, but I just want you to know how much I adore you, how much I've always wanted to run with you more, how much I just find to the core, and even in our first 10 minutes, I went, well, of course I adore this man so much. You come from the same, soil I come from.
Right.
You were raised very similarly and actually went through kind of similar life experiences I did. And it's not about, we have to marry each other. No, but I get it. It makes more sense structurally, internally, heartfelt wise, why I've been drawn to you in the way, and why I wanted to bring you into this conversation, and how much it means to me that you said yes, even after not having seen each other for as long as we have, because I think you're quite an asset to the world. I think you're an asset to our industry. I think you're an asset to the hair world. I think you're a genuine human being. I think you're delicious.
Thank you. Listen, I love and adore you. I appreciate every single thing you're telling me, and I'm taking it in, and I acknowledge it, and I feel like I'm right where I need to be. And of course, the very first time we met, there's a likeness within soul, you know. And I think too, it's important to ask. And I love when people ask. I will always try to say yes if I can. And I think that's important too, because it allows me to participate in something that I don't normally participate in. But when you lean in and you participate, great things are going to happen, whether they happen immediately or happen 10 years down the road. Be mindful that every single thing you're doing is for a purpose. And if that purpose isn't for good, then stop doing it and do something for greater good. It's just a simple process. And of course, I would always say yes to you. Thank you for having me also. It's been fun.
It's so much fun, such a pleasure. And really, thank you for all of the, I think, human life foundational structural gifts that are core to how to live one's best life. Show up,
amen,
value, right? Be kind, show up, participate, and be a team player.
100%.
Love you so much, Dean.
I love and adore you. This has been very fun. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
I am so thankful to have had this opportunity to share Dean Banowetz with you all. He really is quite a talented man and has so much heart and has so much talent and so much to share. And I hope that you were inspired and entertained as much as I was. And I look forward to you continuing to be a part of this community and listen in as I share my guests and their life stories with the world here on the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast. So join me next week and every Monday as I drop new episodes with guests that I love to share, that I find interesting, and that I love to know what makes them tick and share them with the world. Because here at the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast, it's all about connection and it's all about conversation. And it's all about where the spirit is young, the soul is wise, and the life stories are vast. And we talk about everything from soup to nuts, or what I like to say, from cannolis to egg in the holes, and don't forget the s'mores. So join me next week and every week. Share, join, and subscribe, and be a part of the Camp Fifi Uncensored community, and share it with the world, because with that, we will get to connect, and we will get to converse, and we will get to have interesting conversations where we desire to be heard, seen, and learn and entertain. Much love to you all. Have a great week. Bye for now.